You're listening to Airey Bros Radio. Be there or be square, because it's all killer, no filler.
Hey, this is Matt Seidel.
Hey, this is Brian Keeneland.
This is David Weiss.
This is Jeff Meldrum.
Hey everyone, this is James Fitzgerald.
This is Rob Earth.
Hey guys, this is Ian McCall, Uncle Creepy.
So this is Martin Rooney.
This is Roger Steffen.
This is Del Bigtree.
This is Monica Perez.
This is Troy Steiner.
This is Miles Moran.
Hey guys, I'm Adrian Bosman.
This is Charles Nick with Third Wave Water.
It's Brent Tobler, and you are listening to Airey Bros Radio.
Yeah, my favorite conspiracy theory is that people think the conspiracy theories aren't real.
Our family was like the Waltons on acid.
We're your guys, and we'd be happy to be your shamans.
These people who think it's Taylor Ham, I think they got some screws loose.
I forget who said it. I'd love to give them credit. I think it was the Airey Bros who said, like, when we all do better, we all do better.
I vetted you, and you guys seem like a good couple fellows, so it'd be fun to hang out with you virtually for a bit, chat with you.
Oh, man, you guys look cool, man. I'm with a couple of cool cats over here.
Am I correct? Were you actually camping? Did you actually pitch your tent on Hope Pass? Did I hear that? No, okay.
No,
that's one of those urban legends.
And sucking that thing.
Oh, it's great.
No.
This is already my favorite podcast.
Dude, the minute you step in Iowa, they're throwing you on your back. The shitty wrestlers go out for basketball in my state.
The Airey Bros podcast. A couple dudes, built pretty good, look good. They're based out of Colorado.
You know.
I wonder if people won't take cryptozoology seriously when you guys are saying this interdimensional crap. Hey man, this was weird. Thought you might want to hear about it. A wood booger sanctuary. And let me preface this by saying that, I am a avowed conspiracy theorist. If it's weird, I'm into it, whether it's Bigfoot or ghosts or whatever. Those kind of sightings are a dime a dozen. You don't need no woo-woo. You don't need no interdimensional stuff. They could absolutely positively, be in all that water. What really got the Oklahoma octopus started, a book that I put out last year called Strange Tales from Virginia's Mountains. She'd been holding on to a Bigfoot sighting that she had for years. You can imagine, you see some weird humanoid thing crawling in the woods. This is Denver Michaels, and you're listening to Airey Bros Radio. I'm also active on Twitter. I've got a Facebook page, and like you said, I've got a YouTube channel. So just search for authordenvermichaels is the best way to find it.
You have quite a few works on Amazon. Do you have maybe a primer or one favorite work that you would recommend to people as they're checking out your stuff, which would either your newest one, or is there something like near and dear to your heart that you would recommend for people?
Yeah, probably. I guess my favorite one kind of changes depending on the day or the mood, but one that I would really recommend to people is my a book that I put out last year called Strange Tales from Virginia's Mountains. And, you don't really have to care about Virginia. You could be someone in California, Colorado, and there's still going to be some cool stories in there that you're going to enjoy. I touch on things from anything from cryptids. I've got a little section on a couple of ghost towns in Virginia. Lost treasure tales. There's a little something for everybody if you like the strange stories. So that I recommend that book because that kind of it sort of encompasses everything that I sort of enjoy talking about and writing about.
Well, you mentioned strange things in Virginia, and something I saw from your research that really had me scratching my head, and something I wanted to kind of dive into with you was the Bigfoot sanctuary, the town or the county that's a Bigfoot sanctuary. Let's kind of get into that a little bit. How did that town become a Bigfoot sanctuary? What is that town? And is that a place known for a lot of sightings, or is that just something people did to kind of be hip and cool?
Well, the last part of the question, I think the sanctuary aspect of it probably was in a lot of ways to be hip and cool, but that notwithstanding, so the town of Norton, Virginia, and it's way down in southwestern Virginia. if you look on a map, Virginia's kind of shaped like a boot almost. That would sort of be down in the big toe area. It's really, as far as Virginia goes, all the people live up in northern Virginia or Richmond or the Tidewater area, and this is kind of a little pocket of Virginia that a lot of Virginians don't really know is there. But it's a very rural area. Most of the I guess most of the economy comes from mining, coal mining, that sort of thing. But it's real heavily forested. It's in the Appalachian Mountains, and there's just a ton of Bigfoot sightings that just historically come from that area, and locally people call it the wood booger, and I think people might even use that name in places in North Carolina and even over in Tennessee too. But locally they call it the wood booger, and that's what people call it. But it's essentially matches Bigfoot, Sasquatch sightings in every way. 7 foot tall, 8 foot tall, hairy ape-like creature. And there had been so many sightings that I'm sure a lot of your listeners are familiar with the Animal Planet's Finding Bigfoot show. They went down there and did one of their investigations, and of course they didn't find anything, of course, but anyway, they did like a town, it's kind of their typical format. They do the town hall meeting and then do an investigation. And so I guess I want to say that was in 2011, and then in 2014 the Norton Town Council adopted a resolution declaring the High Knob area. It's a Flag Rock overlook. There's a park in Norton. It's like about a 3,000 acre park, but it's bounded by national forest and that sort of thing. And they adopted a resolution declaring the city of Norton and that park, that adjacent area, a wood booger sanctuary. And so if you go up there today, like up on top of the mountain, there's an overlook. There's a Bigfoot statue. Along the roadway, they've painted these ginormous orange Bigfoot tracks. And it's kind of cool. You kind of drive up, you follow that up to the top of the mountain to the statue, and really, it draws. I went there one day when I was down the area visiting my dad, and there were like some cars. There was like a car from Pennsylvania there. There was a couple other out of state cars, and it really, because of that Bigfoot episode and the the sanctuary, it really does draw people to the area. So I think that was probably the biggest reason, that they adopted that resolution. And a lot of other towns across the nation have done similar things. But that's the long and short of it. But it's not just a bunch of BS. There are a lot of Bigfoot sightings in that general area.
With your research and all that you've done, was Bigfoot, Sasquatch, was that your first point of interest? Was there some other things, being from Virginia, that piqued your interest for cryptids or going down this kind of rabbit hole?
Well, really for me, and although I am from Virginia, and what really piqued my interest down this road was lake monster sightings and lake monster reports, and that was the first thing that I wrote about. And it might sound weird, a guy from Virginia getting into this, because in Virginia we've only got like 2 natural lakes, believe it or not. There's only 2 natural lakes, and one of them is like, gosh, it's like not even 100 acres. It's just really weird. And so I guess there was no real reason for me to to get in, to really be interested in that. But for me, out of all the cryptid creatures out there, right? Your Bigfoots, your dogmen, your flying humanoids, all those things that people report seeing. I always thought that lake monsters and sea serpents, I kind of lump them together in a lot of ways. I always just felt like those had the biggest chance of being real, right? Being, actually something undiscovered out there, because, you look at all the water, you look at all the reports, and, we just don't really know what all's in the lakes and oceans and that sort of thing. So that was really probably the first thing that sucked me in. But if it's weird, I'm into it, whether it's Bigfoot or ghosts or whatever.
We're the same over here. And it's interesting because I think for most people, they only think of, when they think of like lake monsters, they think of Loch Ness. And for a lot of people, the majority of people, I think that's where it begins and ends. But,
yeah.
That's not the case at all.
Yeah, and that's that is, and that's really kind of I guess what really started that for me, that lake monster fascination, because I'm almost 50 years old, so back in the 80s, growing up as a kid, at the supermarket with my mom, you'd see all the like the National Enquirer type magazines at the checkout, and you'd always see the lake the Nessie neck looking thing, and so I kind of took it with a grain of salt, I guess. I'm not saying I really believed or disbelieved. If you pinned me down, I probably would have said it was more like a tourist attraction, kind of like we were just talking about. But then, as I got a little older, and I've told this story a lot before, but I think it bears repeating, that I was watching an Unsolved Mysteries episode. I think I was like a junior in high school, thereabouts. And at the time, it's kind of like my favorite show. And they did an episode on the Ogopogo up in Canada. And so, that really, kind of sucked me in. But what I remember most wasn't really so much the episode and the evidence there, but, Robert Stack, he had this, had this cheesy 80s graphic, with all these little dots on the screen of, like, I want to say like 60 places that had lake monster sightings, U.S., Canada, and over in Europe too. And I was just kind of like, wow, it just kind of, really stuck with me. And the older I got and the more I learned about it, it's widespread. These reports come from all over. And, we were just talking about the Woodbooker Sanctuary down in Norton. Well, up on Lake Champlain on the Vermont and on the New York side of the lake, both couple towns there have resolutions, protecting Champ, and there, there's other places out in Nevada. They, I can't remember if the resolution passed or not, but out in Walker Lake, I believe it is, there's something similar there. They did White River Monster Sanctuary in Arkansas. So these things, they're nationwide, and I've always just felt that there's probably a little something behind it,
So I feel with like the lake monsters, like Rich said, people might be a little bit more into Bigfoot or have had Bigfoot sightings, or even anything that you might see in the woods, just because people don't spend that much time by lakes. Like you said, Virginia only had 2 lakes. You kind of have to be in a location of a lake. But throughout your research, and I know you just mentioned some of the sanctuaries, what are some of the places that people are seeing, some of the most sightings, whether it be in the United States or outside of the United States? And have you ever had an encounter at one of these places? What keeps you kind of going back to the lake monster? Why is that one thing that kind of piques its interest to you?
Well, for me, Taking a step back, I mean, I just mentioned Lake Champlain. I mean, that's a huge one, and I don't even know how many documented reports there are from there. I want to say there's like in the north of 600, and these are like documented where where you can find them online or this or that. That doesn't include what people don't say and what people just talk about word of mouth. Okanagan Lake in Canada, Flathead Lake in Montana. These are out there. I mean, it's a lesser known of the lake monsters, but I want to say there's over 100 documented reports out there in Montana, and so these are just all over. And over in Europe, I mean, everybody knows about Loch Ness, but there's and I can't really think of the names of some of these lakes off the top of my head, but I know a guy that he's a UK researcher, and there's all these lakes in Ireland that that have similar tales. Sweden, of course, there's in Russia, Siberia region, there's tales of these creatures. So it's just widespread, all over the globe. But as far as like having a sighting, I had what I think was probably a sighting of the Flathead Lake monster. The wife and I, we travel around the country full time now. Back in 2020, we kind of just said, screw it. We got our last tuition payment made and got the last kid through college. We just said, screw it. Let's sell our house, buy an RV, and hit the road. And
congratulations.
Yeah, I mean, it's got its challenges, but it's like we washed our hands of the kids, or at least that part of it. And you never wash your hands of them, but you make that last tuition payment, and it's like, all right, let's do something for ourselves now and kind of do what we want to do. So anyway, blah blah, we've been traveling the country, and we're out in Montana back July last year, and we were staying about 15 minutes thereabouts north of Flathead Lake. And if any of your listeners know what I'm talking about, it's a beautiful lake. It's just south of Kalispell, Montana, about an hour, I guess, from Glacier National Park. Just a beautiful place. I mean, I can't recommend strongly enough for everyone to try to go see it. But at any rate, I was really fascinated by the lake, because of all the lake monster sightings that have been there. So, every chance we got, we went out there and, would spend a day on the lake, whatever. And it just so happened that, we were driving around the lake, but we were over, like, one side of the lake is like a 2-lane road with pretty good pull-offs, but you go on the other side of the lake and it's either a county road or a state road, 2-lane, real narrow, no place to really pull off in that section. And, we were driving along, and I just saw like these 3 black humps in the water. I'm just kind of like slowing down, and then my wife's, I'm kind of paraphrasing, but she's just like, are you seeing that? And I'm like, yeah. I didn't want to say nothing because I didn't want to, I wasn't sure if I was believing it myself, but, we just saw these humps, I mean, like 3 big humps, probably several feet up out of the water. Didn't see like a head or neck or anything. So that kind of, that's why I kind of, am not really sure that I saw what I think I did, but I mean, we both watched it for a few seconds. Like I said, I slowed down. There's no place to pull over, no way to get a picture because the road is so narrow right there, and it's all just narrow driveways, private property. There's no way to really, and it's heavily wooded too. So there's just no way to really get a picture or video, but we're watching these humps, and it just all of a sudden just like sank down. And so, I slowed down as much as I could, and, we never saw it come back up. And I mean, I think I saw the Flathead Lake monster, but, I would take a polygraph and say I did, but I mean, whatever. Those kind of sightings are a dime a dozen, right? That's there's hundreds of those. If you saw it, you feel like what you saw. If you're a skeptic, it's who cares? It was a wake. That's what everybody that's kind of the go-to answer, like for the kind of thing that I saw, that where it just sort of like sinks down. They'll say it was a wake, but I mean there were no boats in the area or anything. It was a really calm day, so I don't know. Take that, take that sighting or lack thereof for what it's worth.
So Denver, you say when you see something like that, you kind of question what you're seeing, and I think it's one of those things in the world we live in today. A lot of people would think, "Oh, I don't see anything; it's a wake or whatever." And I know you're probably having conversations with a lot of people that are seeing different things, reporting stuff to you, and I feel like it takes a specific type of person, maybe with a certain belief system or kind of view on the world, to kind of accept these things. Do you kind of notice a correlation between people who are in these communities or reporting things that maybe have a certain belief system or a higher belief in something that allows them to kind of open their mind? Or do you have, a higher belief in something that allows you to open your mind to things that are not rational to the normal mind?
Yeah, I'm really not sure, and I've thought about this a lot, because I mean, it really, the type of people that are into this, I mean, like myself, I mean, they kind of run the gamut. I mean, from all education levels, and really, I mean, you talk to people that, I mean, there's people out there with doctorates that believe in Bigfoot, and I mean, everybody from high school dropouts to people with doctorates, all kinds of people from all socio-economic backgrounds, race, religion. I mean, you name it. People, I don't know. It's just like some people, I think I really don't know how to explain it, but it's not like one certain group or like demographic or whatever, like you would, kind of like the way you would lump voters or people that would be a fan of a TV show or something like that. It just kind of runs the gamut. There's all different types of people from all different backgrounds that are into these things, and I don't really know what it is, and people have asked me, a lot of your people that are into it, have had a sighting or encounter, or especially like as a young child, and I can't really point to anything like that. I've just always been open to just all sorts of ideas. I don't really know how to explain it.
While we're on the topic of lake monsters, I personally live not too far from Lake Thunderbird Lake in Norman, Oklahoma.
Oh yeah.
That you had an article about an octopus.
Yeah.
Octopus, and then there's also one I saw today from like the 1930s that there was octopus in a lake in West Virginia.
Yeah. So I don't really know exactly when the Oklahoma octopus started, gaining traction, but I want to say it's around 2005, 2007, and I think what really kind of got it started was there was like an uptick in drownings, I want to say, from around that time frame, like 40-50% more than there would normally be, and I think that kind of got the ball rolling. But what really got the Oklahoma octopus started is I don't know. I was not really into this show a whole lot, but there was a show on Animal Planet called Lost Tapes, and some of your listeners may remember that show. But anyway, it was and it said, like, when it come on, that these are dramatizations. It's just kind of like stories, right, of cryptids and that sort of thing, and they would do these dramatizations. And I think kind of like what happened with the Oklahoma octopus is people kind of took that Lost Tapes show a little too seriously, because like a lot of your so-called reports and sightings that you look up online, the person that like one of the biggest one, like these teenagers were attacked, right? And like had suction cup marks on their arms and blah blah blah, and like at the hospital, like I can't remember the characters now. I want to say one of them was like Ruthie Simple. That sounds like one of the characters. For some reason that stuck with me. But anyway, if you go back to the show, it's like that was one of the characters in the show, in the little dramatization they did. So I think it was kind of a combination of that show, like an uptick in in the drownings. And I even think like in one of the instances there was a boy, and like when he was kind of like struggling in the water, and he yelled out that something was pulling him down. So I think it's kind of like a combination of all those factors that kind of spawned the Oklahoma octopus. But personally, I don't really think that there's a species of, freshwater octopus, in these lakes in Oklahoma. But, there could be something in there. But going back to the octopus in West Virginia that you were talking about, that was in the Kanawha River back in the 30s. But this is, it kind of played out. It was late December, and a couple guys had been out fishing, and supposedly, an octopus had, attacked their boat, and it was the story that went through the papers. But long story short, a local seafood market had had a shipment like stolen, and it had an octopus in it. So these guys had actually taken the octopus out in the boat, and made this this crazy story that went through the paper. So it was kind of a disappointing end to that one.
So I think that's a really good point of maybe whether it be television or fictional books kind of making things more so than what they are, and then it getting in the collective consciousness and people kind of talking themselves into certain things. Yeah. In your research, how do you kind of decipher that? I know you mentioned the octopus. Has there been some other ones that you might wanted to believe, but then when you did more research, you realized people were making stuff up? And is there certain things when you read certain reports, it just sticks out based on the report? People are fibbing when you're getting into cryptids and people reporting things?
Well, I mean, and I will say it is very, very hard to separate the wheat from the chaff with these things. I mean, it just is. And I just kind of, like, for me, if somebody tells me something, I just if I'm gonna err, I'm gonna err on the side of believing them, because so many people are sincere, and they've seen things or experienced things that they can't explain, and it's a real relief for them a lot of times to share their story, because like I had one lady email me through my website, and she'd been holding on to a Bigfoot sighting that she had for years, and hadn't really talked about it or told anybody, and it was almost like a relief that she was letting it out, right? And she didn't do anything after that. She didn't, she just told her story, and that was pretty much it. She didn't want any attention from it, nothing like that. So I really tend to believe those people. Now, sometimes I have run into a few folks that they want attention, and I don't know if it's something not clicking in their life or this or that, but to tell their story and then to keep talking, having somebody to talk to about it and this and that. I think that some people kind of like that attention. There was one guy, he had told a story to this group that I'm kind of loosely affiliated with, National Cryptid Society. And his story, it was kind of like, wow, he'd seen these supposed dogmen creatures, and a lot of people have those sightings. So it was pretty intriguing, like what he told. But then he just kept talking about it, and then next thing you know, he'd went and told these other people about it, and then all of a sudden his story's all over the internet and on these YouTube channels. And then like he's commenting on people's comments on the YouTube channel and all that. I'm like, all right, this guy's just, he just loves attention. I don't know if, there are people like that. And then there's people that just think it's funny to like hoax people, there are those people, and, I don't know why they get a kick out of it, but they do. So I'm always leery. I try not to comment too much on photographs, videos, that sort of thing. You just, anytime you're like, oh yeah, this looks real, you just end up looking foolish when you find out it's CGI or something staged. So I don't know. I guess I'm kind of filibustering you here. But long story short, it's tough. It's tough to separate the wheat from the chaff sometimes when when you're talking to eyewitnesses and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's interesting the CGI and the photoshopping and stuff to really. Sometimes it can be, with the technology as good as it is, sometimes it can be easy to get duped. I know I've had it happen to me once or twice, especially.
Oh yeah.
Stuff. So you really have to be careful before you dig too deep into something or even repost something, because
yeah. Yeah, and I won't even do it. Like I'll maybe like repost a picture or something, but I will kind of put the disclaimer that this is purported to be, and the only way I would ever vouch for anything is if like I would have to know the person pretty well, before I would actually vouch for something, because there's just so much out there. And even like, I won't even post up, a lot of my own stuff. Like, my wife's taken some pretty good pictures, like in haunted places and things. And I really don't even post a lot of that stuff because, you just, on one hand, like you want to share things but on the other hand, you don't want to be the red circle guy yourself. You know what I mean? And so I'm, I've got a lot of pictures, that my wife has taken or I have, and even, even things that look like interesting tracks and stuff like that out in the woods. And I just kind of keep in my back pocket, just because there's, it doesn't really add anything to the conversation, I guess, unless it's something real compelling, it's like, who cares? You know what I mean?
Denver, you mentioned before that once 2020 came, a lot of things changed for you and you decided to hit the road. And once 2020 came, that's when we saw an alien disclosure, something that people have been denying for years. And, it's the same type of thing where you talk about aliens, people say you're crazy or you're making that up. Do you think cryptids fall in that same category where it's something that the CIA or some of the letter agencies know about, but they kind of keep from us? Or do you think cryptids are something that's kind of like the Wild West and no one's controlling it? Or is there someone keeping this information? And if there is, why would they keep this information from us?
Well, yeah, and I had this conversation, or similar conversation with, with some guys I know, who they believe that, the government is, withholding, knowledge and even evidence of Bigfoot from us. But, and let me preface this by saying that, I am a avowed conspiracy theorist. Okay. There's no conspiracy too big or too small for me. I'll go down any of those rabbit holes, but, the government hiding Bigfoot from us or these other cryptids, I just don't really buy it, because I just, what would be the end game? The government only is going to do things that really benefit them. And what is the net benefit to hiding cryptids from us? How even could they? I mean, just the the resources that they would have to devote to that kind of thing, to me, would be would be challenging. And I've always come down on it that I always thought that, like if the government did come out and admit that Bigfoot does exist, we know it exists, we know it's a flesh and blood creature, and we know that there's Bigfoot habitat in these forests all over the United States. I mean, to me, the government would be able to take over way more power that way, right? They could just form land. I mean, they could literally commandeer land from from people out west and other places. They could shut down vast parts of the national parks, national forests. They could just go ahead and gate it off, not let anybody back there. They could take over more land. So I've always felt that it would, if the government was going to do something cryptid related, right, it would be more to say, yeah, Bigfoot exists. All right, now guess what? You can't go on this land anymore because it's an endangered species, and we've got to take over all these parcels of land till we can do all these impact studies and That's kind of like how I've came down on it. I just don't really think the government knows that much about cryptids, and I really don't think they care, to be honest with you.
How do you think they remain so elusive?
Well, I mean, I think that that makes a lot of people in the cryptozoology community mad when you suggest that sort of thing. I mean, there's some go on Facebook groups, there's some knockdown drag out fights. It's like, no wonder people won't take cryptozoology seriously when you guys are saying this interdimensional crap, but I mean, to me, for me, it's on the table, right? I mean, because if it's not, then you've got you've got Bigfoot, and just one of many, but you've got Bigfoot, and I mean, how many people are out there looking for it, and like the best video you still have is the Patterson Gimlin film. What was that, 1967? That's still the best video. I mean,
it's like the moon landing.
Yeah, I mean, it just is, and I mean, you've got a lot of people have casts or replicas of casts of tracks. You got inconclusive hairs. You got a lot of pictures with red circles around them and that sort of thing floating around. But there's just not the evidence that that there should be, right? I mean, you would think that an 8-foot tall creature, and presumably there'd be reproducing populations of these things, and from what reports indicate, I mean, like in all 50 states, you would think somebody could have nailed something down by now. So that's why I leave that on the table, because I don't, because otherwise, I mean, everybody that's seen one of these things is just wrong. And I mean, I've talked to avid hunters, right? That they live to hunt. They live just that's all they think about. And when it's not hunting season, they're out shooting their bows. They're out scouting in the woods. That's all they care about. I know tons of guys like that. And I saw a couple of or talked to a couple of guys, and they've seen one of these things out in the woods, and then they won't go hunting anymore. That was like their whole life, before that happened. And they're not mistaken bears. These hunters and hikers and people that have spend a lot of time outdoors, right? They're not mistaken bears for these things. So I just leave all the options on the table, because I just think there's too many people that have seen things like this, to just dismiss it.
Yeah, it's interesting that especially with the Bigfoot community, as you were saying, that there's certain things that are off the table, and there's almost like a divide between, or maybe multiple factions within the community of, some people maybe think it might be a humanoid, some people might think it's, like a skinwalker or shapeshifter, some people think it might be interdimensional, and they can't get along, even though they all believe that it's something that exists. They can't, there's all that infighting, which I find fascinating. The other thing, talking about Bigfoot, another thing, mentioning, the government maybe keeping secrets from us or whatnot. One of the things I also find fascinating, and I know you've touched on it a few times in some of your works, is the giants that have, skeletons and whatnot that have been discovered not only in the United States, but around the world. And then also, touching on that, what is or could potentially actually be going on in the national forest, that is, those areas are so protected.
Yeah, well, as far as giants go, this is something where I do subscribe to some level of conspiracy. I don't necessarily think that there is an ongoing conspiracy to hide giant discoveries, but let me just back up a second for any of your listeners that aren't real familiar. 1800s, especially late 1800s and into the early 1900s, all over the nation, and especially places like West Virginia, Ohio, out up in like Wisconsin, really every state in the union, but those really kind of stand out. There were giant bones discovered. People were like, as more and more people moved westward and they cleared land for housing, farming, commercial type development and things. People were just routinely plowing up, and just like road crews were finding, like giant femurs, giant skulls. I mean, and newspapers in the day, it's just full of them, and it's all reported very matter of factly. Just be talking. They'll just be just little blurbs, like in just some random newspaper. Road crew out working, discovered 27-inch femur. It's just stuff like that. County histories, things like that are just full of these discoveries of, and also, there were a lot of mounds, especially like in the Ohio Valley and farmers or landowners would open the mounds, looking for artifacts, things like that, and just discover these enormous skeletons entombed in these mounds. And the Smithsonian, they eventually got involved in a lot of these mound surveys, and in the Canal River Valley, West Virginia, how they were excavating mounds and sending these large bones, to the Smithsonian in D.C. And so their own records show that, they had just tons of these giant bones, skeletons 7-8 feet long, that they had possession of, and nobody knows what happened to them. Today, it's like you're a kook, to even bring it up. But if you look at their own writings, and you can go on the Smithsonian's own website, they've got, I would encourage people to look in the 5th and 12th annual reports to the Bureau of Ethnology. It shows, measurements for some of these skeletons. I think in West Virginia there were like 17 thereabouts, and it'll say, like, it'll tell you the mound, like say mound 31, and then you can kind of look on the some of their corresponding literature and blah blah blah. But mound 31, 7.5 foot skeleton, things like that. And so they had possession of these giant bones, and it's to me it's like they're gaslighting us, right? They're like, oh, no, we don't have any giant bones. And I'm like, what are you talking about? That's just silly, crazy stuff. But it's right there in their own writings. And so, one of the ways that they try to get around that is they'll say that, oh, well, newspapers back then, were sensationalizing. Okay, and I get that. But they'll say that people didn't know how to measure bones back then, that they, just incorrect measurements. But, it's their own damn field agents, that were measuring these bones. So, it's like they're throwing their own guys under the bus almost. So long story short here, I don't believe that anybody at the Smithsonian now is really hiding anything. I don't necessarily think that there's this Indiana Jones warehouse full of stuff that they're hiding. But I think probably, like in the 40s, 50s, something like that, I think they probably just got rid of a lot of this stuff. When it, it's just got all these inconvenient bones that I think they probably just got rid of them, is what I think.
Yeah, it's interesting that the stuff with in the Grand Canyon, with some of the giants and the Egyptians.
Yeah.
Same thing. The Smithsonian, comes in, says they're doing their research and taking it back to the museum or whatnot, or back to DC, and then down in the basement it goes, never to be seen or heard from again. And chances are probably, like you said, got destroyed the evidence. I like the connection to the mounds. I also find it fascinating too, with maybe the connections with mounds and the
military,
with the military and golf courses. I find that kind of interesting that some of the mounds have been turned into golf courses, and then when you look into the amount of golf courses that are owned or operated by the United States military, it's quite eye-opening.
Wow. Yeah, that's actually, I'm actually going to look into that. That's one that's I don't know how, but that one's kind of slipped under my radar, so I'll definitely kind of look into that.
Well, talking about giants and what have you, I know for me, anytime I go down that giants wormhole, goes right to the mud flood. Do you get down with Tartaria or the mud flood or anything like that?
I haven't really looked, a whole lot into the Tartaria stuff. But yeah, I most of the focus of what I've looked at with giants is just the vast, well, a couple things. Just the vast number of discoveries. I mean, just that alone just blows me away. And it's not just here in the U.S., but it seems like, in the U.S., there seems to be a disproportionate amount here, or at least, record, what we really have records and things of. There seem to have been a disproportionate amount of these, extremely tall people here, and in South America too. But it seems North America must have really been a stronghold. And the other thing that I really looked at a lot with this is just the the tales of giants from around the world. It's not just it's not just the Bible, it's not just the Book of Enoch. All of these cultures around the globe have these tales of giants. I mean, it literally is a worldwide. And to me, that just kind of like with Bigfoot, I mean, to me, like, where there's smoke, there's fire. There's got to be something behind these legends more than, people just exaggerated back then. All the stories are figurative. I don't think all the stories are figurative. I think there were, exceedingly large people on the planet, back in the day.
With the giants, particularly, if there were this race of giant beings or humans that inhabited North America, that would maybe not coincide with what the narrative is of Christopher Columbus and Revolutionary War, yada, 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 that sort of stuff. One of the other things that recently just popped up on the radar in the last 2 weeks because of taking a deep dive on some of your work was, and again, it kind of maybe doesn't fit with the official narrative or kind of like the Rand McNally history version that we get in high school, is the story of the Malungans.
Yeah, the Malungans. Yeah, they're a group of people in southwestern Virginia, and circling back, the book that I recommended earlier, Strange Tales from Virginia's Mountains, I talk about this a lot more in that book. But there had long been this a group of people in southwestern Virginia, northeast Tennessee, eastern Kentucky, that area there. And that area of the country, even today it's predominantly white. I mean, it's like 90 plus, like 95, 96%, white. But there had always been like these pockets of people that, were like dark skinned, but like weren't really Native Americans. So nobody really knew, like, the ethnicity or ancestry of the folks, but they had always just kind of been there in that part of the world. And it wasn't until, the 1990s, or later 90s when, widespread DNA testing became available. And a lot of these families, they've got, they've got Native American blood, of course, Caucasian, but they've also got, it's African American. They've got, and what really stood out was that a lot of them have Middle Eastern ancestry. And, it just really, like, it's just a real puzzle. Like, how do these people that, as far as anybody knows, have been there since the 1700s, in these, isolated places in the Appalachian Mountains, like, where in the world did they get like Turkish blood in their family trees, and I kind of go into that, in the book about some of the various theories of how that may have taken place. But as for me, it's not really that big of a stretch, because I've always believed that any number of peoples, at least pass through North America from time to time. I mean, whether it be Turkish people or, Phoenicians way back in the day. They found Phoenician coins in South America dating back to the, 500 BC. I just think that there was so much going on in the world that we just don't know about. It's hard to say who may have come over here. Would it really have been that big of a deal for the Phoenicians to have reached North American shores? I don't think so. And who's to say that some of them might have stayed, and who knows, what could have happened. I just don't think that, and I never have believed that everything was as simple as, Columbus came over here in 1492 and that's it. I've just never been a big believer in that.
Yeah, and it's also, they build it up to, again, kind of the Columbus thing, or the Pilgrims, that it was like this huge, vast journey to get from one continent to the other. But I'm pretty sure that's been disproven by people in boats, even in sailboats, and it's a much quicker means of travel than what we're taught as kids or growing up in high school and stuff in history classes, that it was like, they were out on sea for months on end and people were dying of scurvy and they were eating their shoes. Yeah. It really doesn't take that much time to get from, say, Europe to America or North America.
Yeah, that's right. And that is. I remember, in school, it's like, you just think that, oh my God, how did they even pack enough supplies to to come over here? And it's really, you're right, it wasn't that big of a deal. Well, let's think about it. The Polynesian people, right, they were going, it was like a 2,000-mile canoe ride, right, to get to Hawaii, and they they did it. So why couldn't other peoples why couldn't the Polynesians have hit the West Coast? I think they certainly did.
And Denver, question, I think these things, right, and not gone with the norm, is how we kind of have these conversations and open people's minds. So I'm grateful for having this conversation with you and kind of these topics that you bring to the table with your work. You've mentioned Dogman a couple times. We're from Jersey, so Jersey Devil. Is there any kind of obscure cryptids that, people might not be hip to that you think they should look into? Have you spoken to anyone that has Jersey Devil sightings? We always get poo-pooed when we bring that up, the cryptid people.
I haven't ever talked to anyone that's had a Jersey Devil sighting. I haven't. Yeah, and most of the the literature that I've read has been more early 1900s. I think was really probably its heyday. But I've like I said, I have heard of Jersey Devil sightings, more recent. But one of the things that I'll tell you, a weird thing that someone had told me about, through my email on my website there. People can hit the contact button and I'll get an email if they ever want to hit me up. But this guy, he had spotted what you would call, I guess you would call him a crawler. This is kind of a weird type of creature that seems to be popping up more and more these days. I don't really know when the first report was or when, how long they've been around, but essentially it's just like a long, tall, lanky, humanoid-like creature. It's kind of like a hairless body, and they crawl. I mean, they just like crawl on all fours, and but like crawl really fast. I mean, like if you're running, can like keep up with you. And I've read a few of those reports, and like some guy contacted me, and like and this was in Virginia, and he was out bow hunting, and he was walking to his truck right around dusk, and just like noticed one of these things in the woods, and just just like totally creeped him out. I mean, it just totally freaked him out. He was just kind of frozen for a minute, like trying to. Yeah, you can imagine. I mean, you see some weird humanoid thing crawling in the woods. I mean, I don't really even know what I would do. We all think we know what we would do, but so he just like took off running, and as he's running, like he slides an arrow out of his quiver just in case this thing like jumps on him or whatever. And I guess it just went away, or he lost it or whatever. But yeah, he got away, and he said he peeled out of there. He said he never went back. He didn't even go back to get his tree stand. He just left his tree stand out in the woods and everything. So, I mean, it was, whatever this thing was, it just really scared him to death. And I mean, I know it sounds weird, and skeptics, of course, it'd be like, like, oh yeah, right, yeah, sure. But I mean, these reports, I mean, they happen. You can, you can read about them, and they're truly bizarre. I don't know what to make of them. I don't really have any theory on what these things are. I don't know if it's, some kind of otherworldly type or interdimensional thing. I don't know if it's, I really don't know what to make of them, but that's one of the weirder things that someone has shared with me.
Have to look into crawlers. Never heard that one.
Yeah, I guess it's. I guess it might.
Anyone.
Yeah, I might be like. I guess they're similar if you've ever heard of the rakes. And a lot of people write that off as like an urban legend, but it's these crawler things are kind of, I guess, kind of similar. Might even be really the same type of thing. But I mean, I guess he could have been, he could have just been messing with me, right? But I mean, he didn't really want anything. He didn't, he's not like, hey, dude, give me a $50 gas card and I'll give you rights to this store. He just was like, hey man, this was weird. Thought you might want to hear about it. And, we exchanged a couple emails afterward. That was about it,
I got one last one for you. We do a fair amount of trail running and hiking out here. We recently had someone on that just completed the Appalachian Trail through hike. Have you heard any stories or gotten any stories about encounters from through hikers on the AT?
Oh yeah, I mean there's definitely and I've done a lot of hiking on the AT myself. Back I lived in Virginia my whole life, before before me and the wife hit the road here. And I mean I've hiked a lot in Virginia, West Virginia, down in Tennessee, North Carolina a little bit. But yeah, there's a lot of stories from the AT. And actually, so so the AT, there's another trail. I'll give you this story that it's west of the AT. I don't know if you've heard of the Tuscarora Trail, but it starts in Shenandoah National Park and kind of like splits off of the AT, goes west for like 250 miles and comes out up in Pennsylvania. And it's actually a little more, I would say it's a little more wilder than the AT. It's more secluded. You don't run into near as many people there. And I used to hike on that trail a lot. And I heard of a report of this guy that was hiking on the Tuscarora, and like just all of a sudden, out in front of him, this guy just like materializes, kind of like walks diagonally almost like across the trail, and like just disappears, just like a weird thing. I've heard of I can't remember. I'm trying to remember where it was. I think this might have been on the Massanutten Trail, which it's all kind of in that same area down in Virginia. Kind of they kind of crisscross the AT, just to give people some background. I'd read this report of this guy. He's hiking, and there's just like this hiker in front of him, and it just like the dude just like vanishes. But these this is actually kind of a common theme. I mean, like down in North Carolina and at Grandfather Mountain, there's a well-known like phantom hiker down there. It's like this old man. It's like this canvas, I guess it's like a canvas army bag, and just like a real wood hiking stick that just kind of hikes around, disappears, freaks people out. I mean, those sort of things happen, and I've heard quite a few Bigfoot stories and mountain lions. Mountain lions aren't really supposed to. It's not as sexy as Bigfoot, but they're not supposed to be in Virginia. And I was reading on a hiker forum. I can't remember the website now, but where somebody had spotted a mountain lion up around what is that, McAfee Knob? McAfee Knob, that's that real iconic ledge, that you see on the pictures of the AT. It's in Virginia, kind of close to Roanoke. I'd read about people spotting mountain lions up that way, and myself, I've found mountain lion tracks, off some trails, all real close to the Tuscarora Trail on the West Virginia border. So there's just all kinds of weird things out in the woods. There really are.
Denver, thank you so much for your time tonight. We have 4 rapid fire questions. First one is, are you a coffee drinker?
Oh, yes, I do drink coffee.
How do you brew your coffee? How do you take your coffee?
Cream, but the I'm trying to cut carbs, so or cut calories. What is it, that powder, that non-dairy creamer, that's what I'm trying to say. And no sugar, just a little bit of that.
Well, I guess when you're on the road, you're at the mercy of where you stop. Do you have a favorite bean or roast or any particular brand that you use?
I used to, my favorite used to be Dunkin', but I've kind of, I'm kind of in the Tim Horton camp now. After I stopped at a Tim Hortons when I was up in Michigan, and I'm like, holy crap, this is good coffee. These Canadians are onto something. So I started going to Tim Horton now.
Shout out to Tim Hortons.
Yeah, shout out.
Denver, do you have any daily practices or rituals that you do on a regular basis to show up as the strongest version of yourself?
Daily rituals, and not to sound too much of a kook here, but I'm kind of one of those try to be the visualizations or power of positive thinking kind of guys. I really started getting into this in 2013, and and some of my I've kind of made it a ritual, and it took some discipline to do so. But before I fall asleep at night, I take about 15 minutes. I try to recount things from the day, no matter how small, just that I'm thankful for. I really try to really practice, being more grateful, even just for the little things. I try to think of things that, like if I was short with the wife or this or that I could have done better. That sort of thing. And then I try to set aside a little time, like, if I got something coming up the next day, how I would like that to go, and just kind of picture that. And then first thing in the morning, it's, thank you that I woke up this morning, that kind of thing. And just try to set how I want the day to go, if that makes sense. I know that sounds a little new agey, but whatever.
We are full woo woo, and we get down with gratitudes and intentions. I know we both do the same thing. We grew up as athletes, so we kind of were brought to the game on visualization, maybe for other reasons. But
but it's life changing once you, like I said, I really started getting into that around 2013. And if I look at my life now and really look at it from that point when I really decided to get serious about that, I mean, I'd always been a believer and tried to practice it, but that's when I'm like, your thinking is poisonous. Let's get this straightened out. I mean, the shift in my life is nothing short of remarkable, and I would, and as new agey and as weird as it might sound to a lot of folks, I mean, gratitude, setting your intention. I mean, it's life changing if you, if you really work it.
Yeah. I find it interesting you say 2013, because I feel like 2012, 2013 is when I had a huge shift too. And I feel like a lot of people in this kind of realm of people we talked in the podcast realm, I feel like a lot of people had that kind of shift in that 2012, 2013 time period. So I find that interesting.
Wow.
Denver, what are you listening to right now? Music wise, podcasts, audiobooks? Are you reading anything?
I don't really listen to audiobooks anymore. I used to be super into that when I was, commuting to work every day. But for me, most of my listening these days is, just Creedence, Allman Brothers, old man music, as my kids call it. That sort of thing. I've always have about 3 or 4 books I'm reading at a time. Right now, I'm immersed in one of the. I'm rereading an old Ivan Sanderson book. What's it called? Abominable Snowmen Legend Come to Life. Sometimes I like to go back and read those old Bigfoot type books, from back in the 60s. Those kind of things. I just. I kind of like to once in a while just grab an old, or an old Eric Von Daniken book, an old John Keel book, just kind of, I don't know, something about that time back then. I just sort of wish I could have been a part of that instead of now. But we're all where we're supposed to be, so it's good.
Do you have an ultimate road song since you're on the road now? Is there something that just kind of gets you fired up to get behind the wheel of the RV?
Yeah, well, what I really like to listen to when I'm cruising, I just kind of like to listen to some Tom Petty while I'm cruising. I don't know. It's like we spent the last winter down in Florida, and nothing like a little bit of warm weather, windows down, some Tom Petty going on. My wife, she don't care for it so much, but that's what I like.
And then last but certainly not least, Denver, I know you mentioned this, so I know we're in a good place here. I guess maybe we could make this 2-parter, but first part would be, what is your favorite conspiracy theory? And if you haven't already mentioned it, what is your favorite cryptid?
Well, I'll answer the second one first. favorite cryptid is lake monsters, and again, that's because I think they're the most likely to exist as a flesh and blood animal. You don't need no woo-woo. You don't need no interdimensional stuff. They could absolutely, positively, be in all that water. My favorite conspiracy theory, oh gosh, I mean, I believe so many conspiracy theories, but how about a light-hearted one that didn't really hurt anybody? The new Coke conspiracy is probably my favorite because, and for folks out there, like I said earlier, I'm 50 years old. So back in 1985, Coke introduced a new Coke. I think their sales were kind of sinking. Well, anyway, it was god awful, just god awful. I mean, it was actually worse than Pepsi. And when they came back with their Coca-Cola Classic, well, guess what? It didn't taste the same. And I stand by that, and, I don't care. They changed the recipe to cut costs and save money. And I think I actually think that they launched the new Coke, so that they could re-release the new formula, with the cheaper ingredients, cutting costs. And like I said, I mean, who cares? Nobody's hurt. It's, not a, it's more of a fun conspiracy theory. I don't know if that really counts as one, but that's that's kind of my favorite, and I guess that's why it's my favorite, right? Because it's got all the elements, right? It's got the corporate greed, it's got the duping the masses, but at the end of the day, I mean, so what? Nobody has to. I don't even drink soda anymore anyway, so who cares if it doesn't taste the same? But for any of your younger listeners, the closest thing you can get to what Coke used to taste like when I was a kid is a Mexican Coke. The Cokes that actually say Henko in Mexico, that like you can get them at Costco or a lot of stores will sell them, and certainly like like your Latin Dome little markets and stuff sell them, and that's the closest thing that actually tastes like a Coke.
That's bringing this up, Denver, is fascinating because we're, as Jimmy said, we're athletes who are very health conscious, and I'm wondering if that was the bait and switch to take out the cane sugar and put in the high fructose corn syrup.
I think it probably was. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
That's a fun one. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, that is a good one. I got to look into that a little bit. I'm a little younger. I was born in '87, so I remember hearing about it, but I didn't.
Yeah. You shouldn't have been drinking Coke at that age.
Thank you so much, sir. Great chat with you. Safe travels out on the road, and hopefully we talk to you sooner or later.
All right, guys. This is a lot of fun. I appreciate you having me.
Take care, Denver. Have a great night.
All right, guys. Bye-bye.